I've got two really beautiful old Benrus Sea Lord watches, and the Benrus Sea Lord was a line of watches that Benrus made that were distinguished from their other watches by the fact that they were water resistant. All their water resistant watches, I believe, were sold under the Sea Lord name, and there was a bunch of different styles of them. The one thing that they had in common was the fact that they did have water resistant cases. These two here were made in the 1960s, and both of them have front loading single piece cases, so you can't open the backs of them. And this was something that was common in water-resistant watches back then because it was easier to waterproof a watch if you didn't have to take the back off, because that just added one more thing that had to be sealed. And these are opened by removing the crystals and then dropping the movement out through the front. And I believe both of them have very similar movements. They're both Benrus DR series movements. One of them I think is a DR2L1, the other one's a DR2L5, I think. I'll see once I take them out here. But they're both variations on the ETA 2370 movement, so they should be very similar to each other. And if they turn out to be more or less identical once I get the movements out, I'll probably show the servicing of one of the movements instead of doing separate videos for the two watches. Here are our initial Timegrapher readings for the Benrus Sea Lord Locke. It's running very fast, about plus 98 seconds a day, has very low amplitude, only 196 degrees, and this is fully wound right now. And beat error is 1.9 milliseconds, which is pretty bad too, so this is going to need to be serviced. Look at the Timegrapher traces. The bottom line is real erratic looking, which indicates probably a bad pallet fork or bad escape wheel. It could just be that it's dirty though too. I'm going to try to clean it and relubricate it and put it back together first. If that persists, then I'll look at the other parts and see if, well, I'll also inspect the parts while I'm doing this too and make sure that they're not visibly damaged, but we may end up having to replace one of those. Here are our initial pre-service Timegrapher readings from the Benrus Sea Lord watch. You can see the rate's very high at 75 seconds per day fast. Amplitude's very low at only 208 degrees of amplitude. And this watch is fully wound, so the amplitude should be much higher. B there is only 0.3 milliseconds, so that's not too bad. So this definitely needs to be serviced. I've got a new mainspring on order for it that we'll install once we get it taken apart and cleaned. We'll go ahead and start out opening up the watches because they're opened slightly differently. This one has a crystal that I can remove using a crystal lift. We take this special tool here, and this tool came with the air pump that I used for popping off the crystal on the one that I couldn't use with the crystal lift. You stick this under the crown, in between the crown and the case, and then you just pry upwards, and it should pop the half stem off. There we go, it just popped out. And there's the half stem. Now we'll do the same thing for this one. This one's a little harder to do because it's not pulling out as far. There we go. There's the half stem for that one. Looks like it's not quite as long as the other one. Okay, now we need to get the crystals off. And like I said, I'm going to use a crystal lift for this one, and I'm going to use the air pump for this one, so I'll show how both of those are done. I'll take the crystal off this one first because it'll be easier to get off. I'm going to use a crystal lift for that, and what I'm going to do is just open the jaws up enough that I can put it over the crystal. Just like that. And then we'll tighten the knob on the top until it grips the crystal. Then I'm going to set it down on the workbench and just keep tightening until it's tight enough that the crystal will be compressed enough that it can be lifted out. I've got a brand new crystal for this that I'm going to put in here, so this one we're going to replace because it's kind of scratched up. Tightening a little more and more because it's not been willing to come out yet. Almost there. It's a little loose, but it's not coming all the way out. There we go. So there's the crystal stuck in the crystal lift jaws. And if we were going to reuse this crystal, it would be very important to get it out of the crystal lift quickly because you don't want to leave it in there. If you leave it compressed, it can damage the crystal. Now this one here we're going to have to take off using the air pump. Here's the air pump, and it has a nozzle on the end. There's interchangeable for different size crown tubes. And you see I've got a plastic bag stuck in there between the nozzle and the metal tube. That's for extra sealing because these things leak air pretty bad. If you don't have that in there, it's kind of a gasket. What I've done is I've taken a Ziploc bag and stuck it over the metal tube and punched a little hole in the center of it and then stuck the nozzle over it, the hole being there for the air to go through. And I'm going to put one of those over this as well to seal between the nozzle and the crown tube of the watch. Okay, so I've got the watch mounted on it. I've got that pushed over the crown tube, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this in, push the metal rod in toward the pump, and it may take a couple of pumps to do it, but it'll pop this crystal right off from the air pressure. And I put my finger over it while I'm doing it so the crystal doesn't just fly away. Ah, there you go. You heard that snap. That's the crystal coming off. There it goes. That was easy. And then we can just pull the watch off the pump. And we're all done. Now we need to get the watch out of the case. Now this watch has a chapter ring on top of the dial, and so the chapter ring is going to come out separately from the dial. If we turn this upside down in my hand, the chapter ring will fall out. So I want to set that aside, and then the movement itself should then drop out from this side because it's going to be hooked into the crown tube on that side. Oh, it just fell right out of my hand. There we go. So let's look at the movement we got here. So that's the ETA 2370 movement. And this one is labeled DR2L1. So we'll see how this differs from the one that's in the other watch. The other watch has a DR series Benrus movement too, which is also an ETA 2370 variant, but it has a different model number, so I'm not sure what actual differences there are between the two of them. And then here's our empty case for it. We'll set that aside as well. And I'm going to put the movement into a parts tray until I'm ready to take the rest of it apart. Now let's do the same with this one over here. This one doesn't have a chapter ring, so the movement should just come right out. There we go. And there's the empty watch case for that one. It's pretty similar to the other. Here's our movement. This movement here differs a little bit because it's got a silver tone. The metal is just regular steel silver tone rather than being gold tone like in the other one. And this one is labeled DR2L4. Is that 4? Can't see very well through with my regular glasses on. No, it's DR2L6. So I'm not sure how that differs from the other one. It looks very similar. It's got the same shock protection system. Everything looks pretty close to the same. Let me get the other one out here and look at it. Both of these have smooth balance wheels too. They don't have any timing screws on the balance rings. So these are much newer watches. These are probably from the late 60s because by then timing screws had disappeared from balance wheels on most watches. Both of these have regulation systems where you can adjust the position of the hairspring stud for correcting bead error, which makes them much easier to regulate. So that's another reason I think these are from the late 60s, because that's something that in the early 60s still hadn't appeared on very many watches. But aside from the color of the movement, the one being the gold tone and one being silver colored, they look pretty much identical to each other. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to video the servicing of one of these, and then but I'm going to service both of them, but I'll only show one of them on video. And then once we get both of them serviced, then we'll assemble them both together on video and show the final steps of putting the hands on and regulating them both together then. Because these are very similar, very similar movements, probably almost identical to each other. I'm going to start with this one. This model is called the Benrus Sea Lord Locke, L-O-C-K-E. And the first thing we need to do is get the hands and dial off. So we're going to use the hand levers for that. To remove the hands, I place this piece of plastic over the hands and dial to serve as a protector. And I'm going to work my hand levers in underneath the hands very carefully so that I don't damage them. I'm just prying up on the hands after I've got the hand levers under them. I'm doing this slowly and gently so I don't break anything. It's not wanting to come off. I'm going to have to look at that under a magnifier and see what I'm doing wrong. Okay, I've got them off now. I didn't have the hand levers quite pushed under far enough. It's hard for me to do that under the camera lens. I need to look at it through an eye loop when I'm doing that work, and that's the way you should do it as well. So I've got all three hands are loose, and I'm going to pour them off onto the parts tray. Now the next thing we need to do is take the dial off, and the dial should be held on by a couple of dial screws, and there's one of them right there. So there's one there, and there should be one on the other side of the movement, and there it is right there. So we'll go ahead and take those off, and the dial should lift right off then. I got both screws out, so let's see if we can lift the dial off now. There we go, that came off pretty easily. There's the dial side of the movement, back of the dial. This is said to have an unusual movement design. Instead of having a regular cannon pinion for carrying the minute hand, this is supposed to have an indirect minute, meaning that the minute hand is turned by a different gear rather than being on the lower spindle of the center wheel. So it's going to be an interesting one to take apart and see how it's put together. Let's go ahead and see what we've got here. This must be the dial. What functions as a dial washer? Oh, there it goes. Okay. So this gear here has that little spring attached to the top of it that doesn't seem to want to come off separately. I guess that's the hour wheel. That looks a little different than the hour wheels on other watches I worked with. Okay, and then there's the cannon pinion, and it has a gear underneath it, which must be what drives it because it's not driven by the center wheel. So we're gonna have to disassemble this carefully and see what we've got here so I don't break something, and so we can remember how we put it back together later. Next thing to take off is the minute wheel bridge, and it was held on by 2 screws, one there and one there, and I've already taken those out. So I'm gonna go ahead and lift that bridge off. And I'll lift out the minute wheel. That's unusual. The minute wheel's got holes on it. Now the cannon pinion and that gear that's under and are still held in there pretty firmly, so we can't get those out right now. I'm not sure how to do that. I'm not sure if I should pull that cannon pinion with my pen vise the way I normally would. I suppose that's probably the only way to get it out. I'm going to go ahead and take apart the rest of the keyless works first. The intermediate wheel here can be lifted out. And then I need to take off this screw here to get the set bridge off. Loosen that screw, so let's go and take it out. And the set bridge will lift right off. Under the set bridge, it looks like we've got a pretty conventional keyless works. We need to get off the yoke spring here, which curves along back here. And once we take it out, we can take off the yoke, and then we can take out the detent lever, which I'm going to have to unscrew, I think, from the other side, and then we should be able to get the stem out. So let's go ahead and take out the yoke spring first, and I'm going to have to do that off camera so that I can hold a finger over it while I'm prying it up with a screwdriver to keep it from flying across the room and getting lost, because that spring looks pretty tiny. If I lose that, I'm not going to find it. Alright, I've got the yoke spring popped out, so we can go ahead and lift it out. It looks like it's not completely out. I'm going to have to pry it the rest of the way here. Put my finger over so I don't lose it when it pops out of the other side. There we go. Now the yoke should just lift out. That's an unusual yoke design too. It has a pen on the bottom that goes into a hole on the base plate instead of having a hole in the yoke that goes over a pen on the base plate. Okay, now to get the stem out and the clutch and the winding pinion, I'm going to have to take out the detent lever, and it's held on by a screw on the other side of the movement, so I'm going to turn the movement over and loosen that screw. This screw right here should be the stem retaining screw. These other screws here are for holding on the barrel bridge. Okay, when I turned that screw, it made the detent lever fall out, since the detent lever is held on by the stem retaining screw. Now the stem retaining screw itself isn't going to come out now because it's held in place by the barrel bridge. So let's go ahead and put the movement back into the movement holder and see if we can take apart the rest of the keyless works now. Now we need to get the stem out so we can take out the clutch and the winding pinion, and I'm hoping that just pulls out now since we've got the stem retaining screw and the detent lever out. Yep, there we go. It's coming right out. There we go, and there's our stem. This is the inner part of the stem. The outer part of the stem came off with the crown when we popped it off earlier. Now we can reach in here and get the winding pinion. And the clutch. And that should be everything with the keyless works. Now, the cannon pinion and the gear underneath it, I think I'm going to have to pull off with the pen vise. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do that now and see if that works, and hopefully we won't damage something. Actually, I better not pull this cannon pinion yet. I've forgotten that the long spindle that sticks through the middle of it that holds the second hand is still there. If I pull the cannon pinion while that's there, there's a possibility of bending it. I don't want to do that. That's attached to the bottom of the fourth wheel, I believe, so I'm going to have to take apart the drivetrain gears before we take out the cannon pinion. So let's go ahead and, well, yeah, that's not going to be on the center wheel. Yeah, let's look on the other side and see how that's built, because I really don't want to pull the cannon pinion while that spindle for the second hand is sticking through there, but I may not be able to get the drivetrain apart without taking the cannon pinion off, because whatever the cannon pinion is attached to, I think that's the third wheel is what it's attached to on this design, might not come off without taking the cannon pinion off. Before we can take the train bridge off, we need to take off the ratchet wheel and the crown wheel on the barrel bridge because they cover up some of the wheels from the drivetrain, and we can't get the drivetrain wheels out while those are in place. So let's go ahead and do that first. I've also let down the spring tension in the mainspring barrel first before I did anything else. And I did that by putting a screwdriver into the ratchet wheel screw and holding it in place while I move the click out of the way, and then letting the wheel slowly turn through my fingers, letting the screwdriver slowly turn through my fingers that's in the ratchet wheel screw, and that let down the tension in the spring. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the ratchet wheel and a crown wheel now. I've loosened the crown wheel and ratchet wheel screws, so we can go ahead and lift them out of the way. Now, one caution with the crown wheel screw, on almost all watch movements, the crown wheel screw is a left-handed screw, and that's true with this one as well. A left-handed screw turns the opposite direction of a normal screw. A normal screw is turned counterclockwise to loosen. A left-handed screw is turned clockwise to loosen. So to loosen the screw on the crown wheel, you have to turn it the direction you would normally turn a screw to tighten it, but on this one, it is actually loosening it. And that's an important thing to remember, because if you try to turn this counterclockwise to loosen it the way you would a normal screw, you're actually tightening it into the movement. And if you put too much force onto it, you can strip the screw and destroy it. So it's very important to remember that this one has to be turned the opposite direction of a normal screw, and that's just for the crown wheel. The ratchet wheel screw is a normal screw. Here we go, and lift that out of there. There's the ratchet wheel. Now the crown wheel looks like it's got a washer on it, like most of them do. I'm gonna try to get that off. There we go. Now let's look at the click mechanism. It's a little bit different than the clicks I've seen on other watches. It's got a real long, thin click instead of the shorter one that you see on most watches, but it has a pretty conventional looking click spring. So let's go ahead and get the click spring out first. And to do that, I'm going to have to hold a finger over it and try to dislodge it with a little thin screwdriver, and keep my finger over it while I'm doing that to keep it from flying away. So I'm going to do that off camera. That click spring actually wasn't under any tension, so I was able to just lift it right out. The way this one's designed, the click doesn't push up against it constantly the way they do on most other ones, and so it is an easier design to take apart and put back together, it looks like. This is a newer movement than the other ETA movements I've worked on so far, so it's a little bit more technologically advanced. The click should just lift right out then. There we go. Now we should be able to take out the train bridge. And the train bridge is held on by 3 screws. One here, and one over here. So let's go ahead and loosen those. I've got the 3 screws loosened, so let's go ahead and take those off. Oh, crap, I just dropped that into the balance wheel. Let's see if I can drop that out of here into my parts tray. There we go. Okay, let's see if we can lift the train bridge off here now. There we go. Now, let's look at these wheels and see how they're put together. Okay, this is a very unconventional design. It looks like that the second wheel, which is usually referred to as the center wheel because it's normally in the center of a movement, is offset way over to here, because this is the one that's directly driven by the mainspring barrel. And then it drives this wheel right here, which is the third wheel, which then drives this wheel, which is the fourth wheel, the one that's in the center there, and that's the one that the second hand rides on. And then the fourth wheel drives the escape wheel, which is down here. So I'm going to see if I can lift out the fourth wheel, because it's the one that's on the top. It's got to come out first. And then I can lift the other gears out, the other wheels out, and then we can see about getting that cannon pinion and that gear on the bottom of the movement off. Okay, the fourth wheel lifted right out. Let's go ahead and see if we can get the others out then. This is the third wheel that we're going to take out next. Oh, something's catching on that one. Why is that not coming out? Oh, there it comes. Oh, there's a pinion on the bottom of it that was interacting with another gear. That's what was catching. There we go. Now I got the camera to focus on it so you can see that. And then, I don't think I can get the second wheel out until I get the barrel bridge out, because the barrel's over the top of it. The escape wheel is partially covered by the balance wheel too, so I may not be able to get that out right away. I don't want to take the risk of damaging the balance, but let's try it and see. There it is, okay. Now, the next thing to do then is going to be to get the barrel bridge off and take out the barrel. And it's held on by 3 screws I pointed out earlier, so let's go ahead and take them out. I've loosened the barrel bridge screws. Let's see if the barrel bridge will come off. The barrel's coming out with it. Must be stuck to it with dried lubricants or something. Hope it didn't damage the wheel there that it hit against. Okay, now here's our second wheel. It doesn't look like it's damaged, so we should be okay. Okay, now, there's that wheel that's attached to the cannon pinion. That's unusual. I don't know how that's held in there. Maybe you just friction fit. Maybe it'll come out with the cannon pinion. It looks like that pinion on the bottom of the third wheel is what turns this wheel here that's attached to the cannon pinion, because you can see the jewel that the third wheel goes into is right there, so that pinion would interact with that wheel there like that. It's an unusual design. Okay, what I want to do next, before I turn the movement over and take that stuff off, I want to get the balance wheel out. And before I take the balance wheel off, I want to open up the shock protection spring and take out the upper balance jewels. And this is an unusual looking shock protection system. I haven't seen one like this before. It looks like it functions similar to an ankle block one. It looks like it has two tines that have to be pushed in or pushed out out from under a little lip that's holding them in place. So I'm going to look at that under a magnifier just to be sure before I mess with it, make sure I don't break something. Okay, that is how it works. I've got one side of it already loosened. It works just like an ankle block when you push out one side and then push the other side out, and then it's got a hinge on the other end. I brought the camera down so we can see it a little bit better, and you can see how one of the tines is out now and the other one's still under the lip. So I'm going to reach in here with my tweezers and see if I can dislodge the other one, and then we can hinge it upward and get the jewels out. I'm just going to use these tweezers that have the downward pointing tips and use that for this purpose. I'm just going to stick it in there in this little space right here and gently push on it until it dislodges. I think it might be out. It might be open now. No, I think that one's still under there. I can't tell looking at this little screen on my camera very well. And I really don't want to break that spring because those are very difficult to replace. Okay, I think it is out. Okay, I did have both of them unlatched, and it was easy to hinge it open using my tweezers once I was able to look at it through my eye loop. I just couldn't see it well enough on my camera screen. In order to extract the jewels, I'm going to use a jewel picker. And this has just got a kind of a sticky plastic end that you touch the jewels and it just lifts them right out. Now I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this up so that it doesn't get damaged. I'm just going to relatch it like that so that the spring isn't sticking out and can't get damaged when we're handling the balance wheel later. Now the next thing we need to do is take the balance wheel itself off. In this procedure with the balance jewels, we're going to repeat this with the lower balance jewels, which are on the base plate of the movement on the other side. I've loosened the screw for the balance cock. Take that out. And then the balance cock should just lift right off pretty easily. Sometimes I'll put a finger over it to kind of hold it down while I'm dislodging the balance cock, because the balance cock is held on by alignment pins on the base plate. And sometimes it can fly off pretty hard when you break it free from those, and that can tear up your hairspring. So I'm going to use a screwdriver stuck into this little slot that's provided for this purpose. And just give it a gentle twist of the screwdriver, and that usually breaks it free from the alignment pins. And then we should be able to lift it right off. Just like that. I've laid this down on a sheet of Watchmaker's paper, and what I need to do is try to get the wheel with the balance wheel's pivot through the hole in the balance cock, and then I want to flip it over. Oops. I want to be careful with this not to damage my hairspring. Flip it over like that, and again, make sure that the pivot for the balance wheel is in the hole in the balance cock. And the purpose for doing that is ensuring that the hairspring stays concentric and doesn't get stretched or distorted like it might if it was sitting where the pivot wasn't in that hole. And then once we've got it in that condition, I want to lift it up and set it into my parts tray, keeping it upside down like that with the pivot still in the hole, and we'll store it in that condition until we're ready to clean it and then put it back in the movement. The last thing we need to remove from this side of the movement would be the pallet fork and the pallet bridge, and the pallet bridge is held on by a single screw. So we'll take that screw off, lift the pallet bridge, and then lift out the pallet fork. And then we need to turn the movement over and take off the cannon pinion and that wheel that's underneath it and the lower balance jewels. And there's our pallet bridge. And then the pallet fork itself I would lift out. These tweezers with the downward pointing tips are really great for lifting parts off of a movement. Okay, so that is everything. Oh, there is one more thing that we didn't take off on this side of the movement. The stem retaining screw, or the stem that holds the detent lever, is still stuck in the base plate here. And this doesn't screw into the base plate, it just slides into it. The screw threads on the bottom of the screw only go into the detent lever. Now we can turn the movement base plate over and see about getting that cannon pinion off and take off the lower balance jewels. I'm going to use a pen vise to get the cannon pinion off because I don't think there's any screws or anything else holding it in place. I think it's held on as a friction fit. So I'm going to use the pen vise I've got here, and hopefully this is the right size jaws for it. This cannon pinion looks like it's maybe a little fatter than some of the others I've worked with, so this may be too small. But this pen vise has interchangeable jaws, so that if it won't fit with this one, I'll switch to the slightly bigger size. And I'm going to put the pen vise jaws over the cannon pinion. Oh, it does fit. Okay, we're good. Then I'm going to tighten it down. Once I get it tight, then I'm going to gently pull straight out. Oh, that fell right off. Okay. I guess that wasn't held on by friction. It must be that once I took off the other stuff on the other side, it came free then. I'm not sure what was actually holding it in place. Yeah, it's just there's just a fixed stud there that it's on, so it's interesting. Okay. And it looks like the cannon pinion and that wheel underneath it are one unit, so it looks like they don't come apart. So the last thing we need to do on this is take apart the lower balance jewels. And that's right there. And it's the same system that we took apart on the balance cock. I'm going to zoom the camera in closer so that I can show you again the procedure for this. And once again, I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to push against one of the tines in this little opening that's kind of provided for that. That one's out, so we'll go around to the other side and do the other one. Same thing. There we go, and it just popped up. So we can then take the tweezers and push the hinge the rest of the way open, the hinged spring. And then we can reach in with the jewel picker again and pull those out. Now it's important too that you keep the upper jewels and the lower jewels separate from each other so that you can know which ones go where, because in a lot of watch movements, the upper jewels and the lower jewels are not the same size and they're not interchangeable with each other. On some they are, on some they're not, and I'm not sure if that's the case with this one or not. So I always assume that they're different just to be sure. You can never make a mistake if you assume that they're different. Make sure you put the bottom one back in the bottom and the top one back in the top. If they are exactly the same, you didn't hurt anything by doing that. But if they are different, then you ensure that you put it back together correctly. So let's reach in here with the jewel picker. Pick up the jewels and out they come. And that is it. I don't think there's anything else to take off. Oh, wait a minute, there is. There's another cap jewel with a screw holding it in place. What's that for? Let's turn the movement over and see what that caps. That looks like the escape wheel. Okay, so the escape wheel has a cap jewel for its lower pivot, but not its upper pivot. That's interesting. So we're gonna have to take that apart. That cap jewel is in that metal housing that holds it, so it'll be easy to get in and out. We'll just have to take the screw out and lift out the metal frame that's holding it there, and then that'll be done with that. You can see I've got the screw loose and it's kind of falling out there, so let's lift it out. And then we'll see if we can lift the jewel itself out. Actually, I think I'll try the jewel picker for that, see if it'll lift it out. Yep, there we go. Took it right out. Now I think we're done with everything. Let's double check, make sure there's no other cap jewels or anything else on the bottom here that we need to come out. I don't see anything. Oh, I need to reclose that spring too, because when we clean the base plate, if that spring is open, it can get damaged. So we need to do the same thing with that we did with the one on the balance cock. I'm going to hinge it back down and then close the tines up by putting them back into their spots. Next, we need to take apart the mainspring barrel, because I have a new mainspring for this movement that I'm going to install when we reassemble the watch. You should always replace the mainspring when you service an old watch like this, just in case the old one has become set or has become worn out or has other problems. So in order to get the mainspring out, you take the barrel and you set it on a hard surface like your tabletop here with the lid side up. And then you just push down on the edges of the barrel until you hear the snap like that, which means that the lid is broken free. Once the lid is broken free, then you can lift it up and you can see the lid is coming apart here, and you can just take it off with a pair of tweezers. And there's the mainspring inside. This watch has a fairly large mainspring barrel for a wristwatch movement. We're going to carefully take the mainspring out here. It's going to fly out in my hand anyway, like it always does, but I would try to carefully get it out. Ah! Just stabbed myself with the tweezers when I did that. There's our empty barrel, and here's our mainspring. This mainspring, I think, is on its way to being set. It's got way too much coil in it, and not enough straight line section, I think. Someone who's got more experience than me could tell me if I'm correct on that, but it seems like this one's got a little bit more of a coil at the end than most of them I see do. Now the barrel arbor is still stuck into the inner coil here, and I need to get it worked out of there. There we go. There's our barrel arbor. Here's a healthier mainspring, and you can see what I'm talking about here with see how the end of it has one big coil in it, where on this one the end is coiled up into several coils. So I think it's too set from being too old, but that's okay. We've got a brand new mainspring we're going to use. We're finished with the disassembly. The next thing I need to do is clean the movement. And I'm going to clean this the same way that I clean all the watch movements I do, so I won't have a separate cleaning video. You can watch my cleaning video that I did with another movement that I always include in the playlist, so you can see the procedure for cleaning a movement. Everything I do in that will be done on this movement. We'll peg the jewel holes, we'll pith the pivots on the wheels, and then we'll run the parts through the watch cleaning machine using the procedure shown in that video. So if you're interested in the cleaning process, there'll be a link in the description for this video to the cleaning video so you can see that. Then the next video I make in this series is going to show the procedure for reassembling, lubricating, and adjusting this movement.